John, it's been quite a week. We've got some stunning Twitter revelations coming from the FBI, the failure to begin investigating basically anything. How you doing tonight, John?
I'm doing really well, Jason. Good to see you.
It's good to see
How
you.
you doing? You look good. You look
Thank you.
bright and cheery and all shiny and stuff. You look great.
Well, I can't wear this shirt on shows with Charles, or he'll make some joke about an Italian restaurant. But people enjoy Fridays, John, because they know that you and I are doing a sponsor-exclusive show. It's going to start at 7:30, less than half an hour from now, on subscribestar.com/I am John Cullen, patreon.com/I am John Cullen, and subscribestar.com and patreon.com/crowdsource the truth. I've also been talking a lot about Odyssey lately. I love Odyssey because not only is it a free speech focused platform, not only have I been building up the content on there for years, such that there's quite a lot of legacy Crowdsource the Truth videos available on here for free, but it also has added a membership option that allows people to view sponsor exclusive content on Odyssey. You know, John, I don't know if I've spoken too much about this, but I've also started Substack. Got to get you on some of these other platforms because they're trying to stamp us out here, the disinformation industrial complex. So I'm just trying to fight it by diversifying and being on as many platforms as possible. People have been asking me if there's going to be material on Substack that they cannot get elsewhere. I'm trying to keep, if you're sponsored on one, you're subscribed on one, you're going to basically get all of it is the idea.
Yeah, I haven't figured out how to do all those moving parts like you have. When it comes to spinning plates, I can spin 2 plates. Subscribestar and Patreon, and that's it. And then I'm out of plates. You're way better at that part than I am. So I've got 2 places.
People can check that out though. Subscribestar.com/I am John Cullen and patreon.com/I am John Cullen. It's one-stop shopping with John. Everything is right there. People can get access to the book.
McDonald's or Burger King. Yeah, we don't have no Carl's Jr. This is none of that stuff. You get choice A, choice
Jack
B.
in the box.
Democrats or Republicans. Yeah, that's it.
Right.
You get two choices. The illusion of choice. So
what
I'm
are we going to discuss
grateful
today, John?
Well, when we get to the patron-only part of the show, when we go over to Patreon and Subscribestar with my folks and the folks that follow you on Odyssey as well, we're going to look at 2 really important experiments, the Milgram experiment and the Asch conformity experiment. And we're going to look at to what degree do these experiments explain a phenomenon that was documented by a researcher named Ms. Noelle Neumann. And Ms. Noelle Neumann was from Berlin, and we're going to look at her work as well. So she documented a phenomenon called the spiral of silence. And we're going to look at both her definitions of the spiral of silence and the role that social media is playing in the spiral of silence. And in other words, do people feel more free to express their real thoughts and feelings in a social media environment, or do they feel more comfortable, like if they were at like at a dinner party or something like that? And I think the audience may be surprised to learn where people seem to feel more free discussing some of the fringe topics and stuff like that. So we're going to look at the Asch conformity experiment, the Milgram experiment, and to what degree do they explain the spiral of silence as described by Noelle Neumann. I think you guys are, for anybody who's into psychology and that, I think you're really going to enjoy it.
Yeah, absolutely. I haven't heard about Noelle Neumann before, but she's in this picture here hanging out with Otto Schlecht. That's a pretty German sounding name, Otto Schlecht.
Yeah, well, she was from Berlin, and again, this is a fascinating phenomenon, and we're seeing it And in this week's news, you're seeing people come face to face with it now. It's kind of ironic, and there's a lot of karma this week. So let's take a look at the deck, and I'll show everybody kind of what's
wait a
happening.
minute. Before we do that, you've surpassed 9,000 followers on Twitter. If people aren't yet following you on Twitter, John, now's a great time. At @I_am_John Cullen is where to find John on Twitter. But yeah, let's dive into the deck here for a moment before we get over to the sponsor exclusive stuff.
Yeah, love the thumbnail, by the way.
Thank you.
If there was a cocktail book, that's one of the top 10. I mean, this is
there you go.
This is awesome work right there. So
thank you.
All right, so let's take a look at the net. Exactly. Cloning the nose. We love to clone the nose here on the show. We like to check the cell structure first, but then we clone the nose. All right, so in the past week, my Twitter follower count went up substantially or significantly from where we were a week ago. A week ago is the one on the upper left, and then just a moment ago is the one on the right. So a little over a week ago. What do we have there? What did that say?
It was you went from 8374. See, it's in this weird mode where I've got to change something or it doesn't let me, to 91. You got 810% bump in a week. Pretty good.
Yeah, picked up. Yeah. So
what do you attribute that to?
I think what's happening is some other big people on Twitter are sharing, or quote tweeting my tweets, and then people see that and they follow along. So there's been a fair amount of that in the past week. So,
but you don't think that they're doing something with algorithms? I mean, a lot of people have been emailing me saying, "Oh, Elon Musk. There's more censorship with Elon Musk." David Knight had a tweet saying,
I saw
worse censorship under Elon Musk. Was that on Drudge or where did I see that?
Well, the thing is that David Knight's content is getting a warning. And I had the same thing when I posted the Sputnik News story. So when I posted the Sputnik News story where you were quoted, I was quoted, Charles Ortel was quoted. When I posted the link to the story at Sputnik News, it says, warning, this is, potentially, it's like, and that was from Twitter.
Yeah, like, so what's the story? Why are they doing that?
I don't know. I keep asking, just simply remove all the visibility filtering. Just let the chips fall. Let them fall where they're going to fall.
Did Elon Musk write back to David Knight?
No, he's never responded. Well, I think no, but other people, it was kind of a hot topic in the last 24 hours. So
yeah, I mean, if you're cat turd, Elon Musk responds directly. I wonder.
Cat turd, Kanakoa, a couple different guys. So yeah, but he's never responded to me. So all right, let's move on. I got more stuff to show you. Lots of good stuff.
Somebody's trying to steal this guy's phone. Sorry.
All right. So this next slide, this is really what it's about. The Asch conformity experiments look at people's need and desire to fit in to a certain degree. And even people who think that they don't feel the need to fit in experience this. And the Asch conformity experiment documents it. And so we're going to take a closer look at that. The next slide talks about the Milgram experiment, which is a different experiment. And the Milgram experiment is something that I guess it's Rob Schneider. Rob Schneider is the guy who used to be on Saturday Night Live, played Deuce Bigelow. Is that right?
Yeah.
Right?
He's actually very smart. I think people didn't realize that until he started talking about vaccines.
Yeah. So
I didn't know that.
So it's interesting to see guys like him and Russell Brand and Bill Maher and people that, historically people thought of as fairly liberal people. Right. And many of them are kind of having this new awakening. And it's kind of interesting to hear of folks call themselves woke. And now I think they're really waking up. If they thought they were woke before, I think now this whole last 3-year thing is just like, really, again, it's like it's hysterical for me to watch guys like Jimmy George. And again, I love Jimmy. was a pretty, liberal guy. And now the liberals think he's like a right-wing, Trump-loving conservative lunatic, but he's not. He's more like me, and like I guess Tulsi Gabbard and what's the name of the bisexual one from Arizona? What's her name? Kirsten Sinema. Kirsten Sinema. So she left the Democratic Party and said, I don't even want to be a member of any of these parties. And so did Tulsi Gabbard. I kind of feel somewhat the same way. So, what can I tell you? I identify with the two of them.
So, but the Milgram experiment, that's where they're shocking the person or something?
Right. So this is where someone, a professor, a doctor or something, is giving the person who's conducting the experiment the instructions, and there's a test subject in the other room, and they're communicating via two-way radio to the other room, or it's like a walkie-talkie intercom type thing. Yeah. And this is a fascinating experiment because the person who's kind of running the experiment in the white coat on the left side is sort of the PhD, the professor from the school. And then the teacher person is the person who's sitting there asking the questions. And if the person at the other side, right, and if the person on the other side gets it wrong, the person who's the teacher has to administer electric shocks. And we're going to look at this and understand the setup of the experiment, what we learn from the experiment, right? So that's kind of the idea here, is like, what did we learn from it? Not, how much voltage did they give the guy? And, could you smell his skin burning? That's not the point. What we're into here is what did we learn from this? And, sort of the story here is that nobody was actually getting electrified.
Right.
And the person that they were actually testing was the person who was administering.
Right. How cruel are you to shock somebody you don't even know?
Well, it's not a question of how cruel are you. That wasn't the test. The test was...
Wasn't it?
Well, that might be what they say to you
but
afterwards.
To see if somebody in authority tells you shock that person, if you would just do it, or say, I'm not going to shock somebody.
Well,
even when the person is like, oh my God, I'm dying from the shocks.
Correct. Yeah, the authority piece is the big piece here. The part is that there's somebody in a white lab coat
telling you to do it.
I think that's pretty much what Rob Schneider was saying this past week, is that we kind of went through a Milgram type experience with Dr. Fauci being the guy in the white lab coat. And regardless of what he said, Julia Roberts was at the altar of Fauci. Doesn't matter what he said. The guy is brilliant, right? Everybody was saying it. The guy on the Daily Show, Trevor Noah, everybody was kissing Fauci's butt.
I just don't like Trevor Noah at all. He is I don't like these assholes who come from foreign countries and make millions of dollars over here and then tell us about how we need to change things here. Maybe just go back to whatever country you were in and be broke.
Maybe.
So did he actually say Rob Schneider was actually talking about?
It was on Twitter. People are chatting about the Milgram experiment and the fact that listening to the CDC, listening to Fauci and Walensky is exhibiting sort of the same phenomenon that we saw in the Milgram experiment. And I agree completely. That's why we're doing the show. But it's not just the Milgram experiment. It's also the Asch conformity experiment. And to the extent that they explain this bigger phenomenon called the spiral of silence. Well, what is the spiral of silence? The spiral of silence is something that was defined by a woman named Elizabeth Noel Neumann. And again, she comes from Berlin. She passed away, I believe, because she developed this like in 1974. She must have passed away because she's like from another generation. And what it talks about is the social pressure to not really step too far out of line.
Right.
Or else you're going to be somewhat lambasted.
See, I've never fallen victim to this, John. I've been lambasted.
Oh, please.
Like, what the hell is wrong with all these people lambasting me?
Well, I think you've experienced this. I think many people have experienced this during the pandemic based on whatever their position was on whatever it was, whether it was their position on inoculations, their position on various therapeutic medicines. Their friends and family had the other side of it, because not everybody agrees with everybody, right? It doesn't work like that. So because different people had different opinions about different things, people lost friends, people lost relationships, people don't talk
Many.
to their cousins anymore, you know, stuff, right? So there's a lot of that went on. And a lot of that has to do with the spiral of silence. People needing to a certain degree to not step out of line to a certain extent. And then the question is, well, then who are the people that do step out of line? Who are the people that don't fall into the spiral of silence? And is there a way to kind of identify them and look at them and what kind of qualities do they have? And so that's what we're going to be exploring. Well,
Yeah.
there you go. Right. So that's
I mean,
what we're gonna
I'm
explore
talking
tonight.
not just about the pandemic. I mean, I was like, 9 and be like, hey, Lego animation. And people are like, get that out of here.
Yeah, well, one of the things
3D
I say
cameras. And they were like, get that out of here.
jokingly is, I wasn't like the other kids. I remember when I was in high school, everybody went to see Rocky Horror Picture Show.
Uh-huh. You didn't go?
I was like, what are you kidding? It was like, it was too popular.
Stupid.
It was like underground. It was too underground popular.
Right.
And I was like, I don't want to see it. And it's like, I don't want to go to that. And then, eventually I saw the movie 20 years later, something like
Right.
that. Long
And you're
after.
like, what's the big deal?
Okay. It was all right. It's like, it's a musical. It's like, come on.
It's
If I had gone to see that when I was 14 years old, I would have been pretty upset.
You know what, though? This was sort of a pre-internet viral phenomenon because this was, I remember
Absolutely.
when I was a kid, it was
New
like
York City.
playing certain movie theaters. It was just every weekend they would play this. And I bet, right, if you were in the right, see, it was a gay culture thing, I think is what it was, that if you were probably in the West Village going to that movie on Saturday night on a certain whatever Halloween or whatever, it was a whole big party. So it was a cultural
In the
thing.
1970s, if you grew up in New York City,
Yeah.
this was it. This was the scene. And
Right.
even the club scene in the 70s, and, I'm talking 1976, 1977, even, going out at night, the whole Rocky Horror look was a thing back then.
Is it who directed is it John? No, Jim Sharman. That's not who I thought it was.
Yeah, but Tim Curry and Susan Sarandon and Barry Bostwick are the three big.
Well, I think I forgot that Susan Sarandon. Right, there's Tim Curry. Wow.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I mean,
but we didn't do this show to talk about Rocky Horror Picture Show. So
no.
Let's jump back to the deck and we'll talk a little bit about Spiral Silence before we go patron only. And then we're going to dig into these experiments, and there's not going to be any shocking. So nobody's going to get injured tonight. There won't be any voltage applied. But yeah, so when we look at the spiral of silence theory, let's just take a quick look at this and explain to people what this is, because it's really kind of important. Elizabeth Noel Neumann's name is connected to this. Most people are afraid of social isolation.
Yeah.
Okay. Now, as I go through these, you think about Jason and I, right? Well, I have no friends, right? So I don't socialize.
That's not true.
Well, all right, you're my friend, but I say that kind of like
I'm far away.
The guy in The Hangover, right? In his underwear and the jock strap. He's like, "You're my friend, right?" So that's kind of how I feel when I say that. It's like, "Oh, you're my friend, Jason." All right, so most people are afraid of social. Thank you, Jason. Most people are afraid of social isolation. Therefore, people constantly observe other people's behavior in order to find out which opinions and behaviors are met with approval or rejection in the public sphere. Mm-hmm. Well, guess what? What does social media do for that? It provides this instant feedback loop.
Right.
Instant feedback loop.
And
instant
amplification.
Feedback. And you can kind of test out different perspectives without weighing in, just by seeing when this guy says this, people blah, 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 blah. When she says that, blah, 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 blah.
Right.
I don't think I'm going to say anything. Look at this. I'm not even going to weigh in. Okay. People exert isolation pressure on other people For instance, by frowning or turning away when somebody says or does something that's rejected by public opinion. People tend to hide their opinion away when they think that they would expose themselves to isolation pressure. Well, isolation pressure is a subtle thing. Revoking an MD's license to practice medicine is a level of social isolation. It's like, what?
Yeah.
And just about every physician that came forward during the pandemic with anything else to offer other than what Dr. Fauci had said.
Yeah.
It was like they wouldn't even let them finish the sentence. Dr. Paul Marik, right? Guys like this. Some of these guys are kind of legendary in the field, right? And to not let them, again, I'm saying this kind of hypothetically or in the vernacular, but basically they weren't allowed to complete their sentence. They weren't allowed to share their findings, share what they were seeing, and be considered. That's not the scientific method, right? The conversation that I had with Dr. Scott Jensen, he said that's what doctors do. Doctors talk to other doctors about cases.
Well, and also there's certain things where some doctors are like, that guy's an idiot. He always wants to do this type of procedure and it's no good for this reason, that reason, and the other reason. And then there's some other doctor, like when you have open heart surgery, I'm not sure what's going on now, but about 20 years ago, they were just starting with a procedure where they keep your heart running while they do the surgery. Typically what they're doing is connect you to a heart and lung machine and stop your heart so that they can work on it so it's not ba-bum, 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 ba-bum. But that has certain dangers, and they've developed a procedure where they can work on it while the heart is still running. And there are certain doctors who think for certain patients that's a good way to do it, and other doctors who disagree. But we need that kind of debate in a field like this because nobody knows.
And that was shut down. And the funny thing is that it was shut down by people like Vijay Ghani,
who don't know anything about it.
Right. And what were you afraid was going to happen? That there might be a debate? Yeah. And nobody, that's okay. That's okay for there to be a debate. It's okay to have people that feel different ways about different things. That's not dangerous. And somehow it seems that there's a bunch of people that felt that debate was dangerous.
Yeah, because their ideas suck, and if they're allowed to be aired out, people will realize that and do what's in their best interest.
I don't think that they're thinking that. I don't think that that's their motivation, that they're thinking, well, gee, I really have a bunch of crappy ideas.
They do know that.
We better censor everybody else who's got good ideas. They may know it subconsciously, but there's got to be some righteous.
Let me clarify.
There's got to be righteous indignation. There's got to be some belief that even if we don't know the truth, that can't be true. There's some righteous indignation here, I believe.
First of all, you and I know each other pretty well at this point, and part of the reason that we get along, I think, is that there's similarities to our personalities. We're bold, we're confident, etc. There's a lot of people who aren't like that, who don't know what they think, and they want to, hear what's being said. I think a lot of those people can be subject to what you're describing, but I think the people that are subjecting them to it, the people who are, starting this process, like, in other words, at some point, a doctor came out and said, hey, I think there might be something else going on. Who was it that initiated the shutting down of that doctor? Somewhere somebody started that. There seems to be this disinformation industrial complex that we're just starting to hear about now in the Twitter files, where they're talking about, all this basically
GEC and
the GEC
drop from Matt Taibbi. Yeah.
Right. But what the GEC is basically doing is it's putting into action exactly what I was talking about in this Twitter coup article that I wrote, where in the Twitter coup, I'm talking about how Barack Obama wrote an executive order. Maybe it's in part 4 here, but there's a Barack Obama executive order where he flat out says, hey, we need private industry to work with, nonprofits. Here, we'll find it in the sources thing. Executive, here, February 25th, executive order promoting private sector cyber. It says this is an Obama executive order. Now, this is not the one that Matt Taibbi spoke about. This came even before the one that Taibbi was talking about, but this is exactly what they're doing. And John, I allege that they utilize these nonprofits because then they can pay some of these scumbags with nonprofit funds. This is basically stealing our tax money to pay these, assholes to shut down free speech. Oh, but wait, while I'm railing against free speech stomping jackasses, the time has snuck up on us, and we got to go over to our sponsor exclusive segment on subscribestar.com/IamJohnCullen, patreon.com/IamJohnCullen, and subscribestar.com and patreon.com and odyssey.com/crowdsource the truth. So join us there. We'll be back in less than 5 minutes. We're going to carry on this conversation in depth. And thanks to all of the viewer sponsors that make the show possible. Stay with us. We'll see you over on Subscribestar, Patreon, Odyssey, and Substack. Thanks for joining us.